Okay guys, we're going to start with looking at the digestive system. So this is page 20 in your booklets. What I'm going to do is I'm going to label this with you. Okay, normally I would assign you to label this, but we are in different times. So what we're looking at here above the mouth is one of your salivary glands. Okay, you do have 3 salivary glands. This diagram is showing you that one there. So salivary glands produce saliva, and that is one of them. Okay. This is the mouth. Okay, so that's your mouth. Food will go in this direction. So obviously food is going to go through here and it is going to come down in this direction. Okay, this area here is called your pharynx. The pharynx is the common passageway for food and air. So notice from your nose, you're also going to be able to take some air into this area. Okay, so that's called the pharynx. Covering off the trachea, so I'm not going to label the trachea today because that's another day with the respiratory system, but we do have to mention it. So this is your trachea, your windpipe. It's going to take air into your lungs, all right? So we don't want food going in that direction at all. We want food to be forced to go back here, okay? So what happens is this flap of tissue here comes down, imagine this little flap here, it stretches out and it covers off the trachea when you are swallowing. So that is called your epiglottis. All right, it's a flap of tissue that works 99% of the time to cover your trachea. If food or water goes down there, any drink, that's when you're actually choking because you don't want anything in your lungs that is not air. Okay, so this works most of the cases. The time that it will fail is if you are laughing and eating at the same time, because laughing requires a breath of air, so this opens up and then we get drinks in there. And if you've ever felt it, you know that it's quite painful and your body starts to cough, which means it's going to push the pressure up that trachea to make sure that whatever you got in there gets out. Okay, so coughing while you're choking is a very good sign. It means the lungs are still working. All right, but we do want food to go in this direction. All right, I'm going to get a highlighter. I debated getting a highlighter. I'm going to get one out. Sorry, my pencil case does not want to open up today. There we go. Okay, so food goes in here, in this direction, and then we want it to go to the back. Okay, and it's going to follow in this direction. Now, what is it being forced to go down? That's called the esophagus. All right, the esophagus is a muscular tube, and that's where we're pushing food down. Now, food will enter this large organ here. It won't enter it, sorry, wrong sentence, but this large organ here is called your liver, all right? Behind the liver is where food is going to enter. So food is going to enter into this organ here. The liver is technically in front of it. So if you were to be able to do that, a dissection of any kind, you would have to remove the liver in order to see the stomach. Okay, so the stomach is behind the liver, all right? And so we will highlight the stomach here in yellow, and that's clearly where your food is going to go. Okay, and then it enters into this area here. So this here is your stomach. The food does not go into the liver. Okay, this is the liver. Liver is very, very large. It has hundreds of purposes. Okay, we're only going to look at one of those purposes in terms of the digestive system. Now, look at this proximity here, the closeness of these two. This is the liver, and this here is your gallbladder. Okay, if you were to look at it in an organism, usually it looks like a green balloon. So the liver makes bile, and we're going to go through this in detail, but it gets stored in the gallbladder. Okay, so that's why they're so close together. The liver makes bile, and extra bile will get stored in this gallbladder. Okay, this is not your urinary bladder, it's a different bladder. So food goes through here, okay? And then what you're not seeing is it would go under this, see this bubbly type of organ here? It would go under that and start into the small intestine, okay? So this here is the very beginning of the small intestine. The stomach ends in this area. This here is called the duodenum, and you are responsible for that this semester, okay? You have to know that the first section of the small intestine is called the duodenum. The duodenum is very, very close to this organ here. Okay, there's an organ right here. I'm outlining it. And that is called the pancreas. So the pancreas makes so many of our enzymes, and they get secreted into the duodenum, okay? So many of these enzymes are going to go into this tube here, all right? And so this goes underneath and it becomes the small intestine. So we've got like this whole section here, okay? Actually, I'm going to just highlight that in blue so that it stands out, okay? This whole section here is your small intestine, okay? And there are 3 different parts which we'll get to, all right? But the most important part from this diagram is the duodenum, all right? And so what we're going to just do right now with this diagram is call this the small intestine, okay? Now, the small intestine will meet up with the large intestine and become the large intestine in this area. So I'm going to highlight that when I get to the note. What you want to know then is the small intestine turns into the large intestine in here. Look at the size difference, okay? This one is much wider. The small intestine is very, very narrow. It doesn't really show that in the diagram, but extremely long. And then the small intestine turns into the large intestine, and this is called the ascending colon, okay? So if you hear the term colon, okay, if you hear the term colon, it refers to your large intestine. So this is your large intestine, or intestine, this is your large intestine, and this is your large intestine, okay? And so because different things happen in different areas, for instance, when the food or the waste products start to enter this area here, there's still a little bit of good stuff happening in here. So we still get some nutrients in that, very, very few, but we still get some action happening in there. And so this part of your small intestine doesn't contain quite the toxic waste, and I'm using the word toxic freely, but it's not quite toxic, but it doesn't contain the same degree of waste as this part of your intestine, okay? Your large intestine. This is called the transcending colon. It's going up. Oh, sorry, ascending, never mind. Ascending colon. Ascending colon, and then we have the transverse colon, okay, and that is not labeled here, so I'm going to give you a label. Transverse colon, and then you have the descending colon coming down, okay, and then that leads into the rectum, where that's the place where you store your solid waste, so the feces is stored there until you can expel it through the anus. So that's the anus, okay? In this area here, you have that vestigial organ, which is your appendix. All right, so now you have this diagram labeled. Keep it in front of you as I go through the lesson.